In this week's video, we take a journey to the USA in the 1800s without even leaving Northern Ireland to explore some amazing historic houses and exhibits. Hello, welcome to Through Lucy's Lens, weekly videos where I go somewhere interesting and hopefully you'll find them interesting too. I'm Lucy, a social historian, and I'm fascinated by the lives of people rather than politics. This week I'm still at the Ulster American Folk Park near Omagh, Ireland. If you didn't catch last week's video, I explored the old world part of the museum, looking at the lives of the people who chose to emigrate to the New World in the 1800s. I'll pop a link in the description to that video, and of course it will be just up here right now if you missed it. This week I am travelling across the Atlantic Ocean to Baltimore, Maryland. And once I arrive, I'll see the high streets and homes of the millions of people who made the journey to a new life in the USA or Canada in the 1800s. This museum is world class, folks, so stay tuned. We leave Ireland and start our journey to America on the Brigun. I step aboard a replica of the 19th century emigrant ship that carried members of the Mellon family from Ulster to Baltimore in 1816. This vessel represents the arduous journey faced by countless emigrants seeking a new life on the other side of the Atlantic. In 1816, the transatlantic voyage took 12 weeks, with passengers enduring cramped conditions below deck. There would have been between 150 and 200 individuals on board, and they would share this confined space, sleeping in and sharing narrow, hard bunk beds. There was also poor ventilation to contend with. It feels dark, claustrophobic, and there is a noticeable lack of portholes. During a rough voyage, I can only imagine the stench down here. Sanitation was minimal on board, leading to the rapid spread of diseases such as typhus and dysentery. According to records, there were never any fatalities on the Brigun. However, records are scarce, and bodies would have been quickly buried at sea to stem the spread of disease. Food provisions on board, although included in your fare, were meagre and often spoiled. Passengers subsisted on hardtack biscuits. This is a kind of ship's biscuit made from flour, water and salt, and sometimes oats, and it was baked to a hard biscuit-type texture. Salted meat and porridge would be eaten too, and fresh water was rationed carefully, and each passenger would have had a small ration of liquor or beer each day. The cost of this passage varied. In the early 1800s, fares ranged from £4 to over £10, and this was a significant sum for many families. £10 in 1820 would equate to around £1,200 today, even for this comfortless trip. This was also about a third of a working man's wage. So for entire families to travel would have been out of reach for many, with the poorest gaining passage to the New World through the parish. This is when local poorhouses in Ireland were emptied of their inmates, with a passage across the seas and the promise of a better life. Alternatively, some might travel alone with the hope of one day bringing their family to them. To afford a more luxurious ship than this would be out of reach for nearly everybody. After 12 long weeks, you would arrive weary, probably undernourished, and I imagine exhausted to start your new life in the New World. At the museum, you arrive in Baltimore, Maryland. The dock not seemingly that different to what you left behind, with seedy boarding houses offering cheap bed and board in cramped conditions. But the buildings are bigger, and the air is sticky with humidity, and the people around you speak differently. You can't decide if you can hear twangs of Scottish, Irish, Dutch, German, But people are speaking English, and now this is your home. Upon arrival in America, emigrants encountered the general store. This was a central hub in communities. These stores offered a diverse array of goods from essentials like flour and tools to luxuries such as coffee and molasses. Sometimes the general store would be a social hub, with groups of men meeting to chew tobacco and play cards around the roaring brazier in the middle of the store. For many emigrants, the variety of products was both exciting and overwhelming. Items like maple sugar, pumpkins and squashes, corn on the cob. They would never have seen those before. Corn, also known as maize, was widespread in America, especially during rural and frontier areas. Often used for cornbread, grits and hominy, dishes that were not common in Ireland at the time. You would have to learn to adjust to eat and cook your new staples. Cornmeal became a staple because wheat was harder to grow in some regions of America. You would also find sweet potato, canned goods, dried apples and buckwheat flour, all unfamiliar things. But the goods on offer reflected the agricultural diversity of this new homeland, and some general stores offered advice and guidance on how to cook and eat these strange new ingredients. Emigrants from Ireland would have never have seen a turkey before, and a bowl of peanuts would have been an unfamiliar and exotic treat. The general store also functioned as a social and economic centre within a town. Farmers could trade surplus produce here, such as bacon, eggs and flaxseed. They could exchange them for goods from the store, and the stores often extended credit, with accounts being settled after harvest. So the first house we're going to see is the Samuel Falton stone house. This house was originally located in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, and was the home of Samuel Falton, who emigrated from County Donegal in 1724. He constructed this house using local field stones, mirroring building techniques from his homeland in Ireland. Like so many people from West Ulster, he settled in Donegal Springs, Pennsylvania, which is about 100 kilometres west of Philadelphia. This building is a sturdy structure, and it provided shelter and a sense of permanence for the family. The house also featured a spring running underneath it, which supplied fresh water and natural refrigeration. Falton's family engaged in mixed farming, cultivating crops like wheat and flax and raising livestock. The house stood on 309 acres of land, and they must have loved it here because it became known as Falton's Pleasure. I think you can clearly see similarities in this home to the homes left in Ireland. I think this house also represents how life was still hard on the other side of your journey. This house is not luxurious and represents hard work, not only in the building of the structure, but in the daily life you would have led here. Samuel Falton died in 1760 and the farm passed to his son James. The Falton family continued to occupy the land at East Donegal until 1778, when a man called David Cook bought the farm. Next up, we have a log cabin, and this home represents the typical dwelling of early emigrants to America. This two-room structure was constructed from logs with gaps filled using clay and straw for insulation. Building a cabin like this required significant labour, including felling trees and preparing the site. However, with community assistance and support, cabins like this could often be built in a single day. These homes were modest but really functional, providing shelter and a base for families to establish themselves in the new world. The cabin has 2 rooms and a loft. Inside the cabin, it was sparsely furnished, with a central hearth for cooking and heating. Families lived frugally, gradually improving their homes as resources allowed. For many families, log cabins like this one became lifelong homes. But for the more ambitious, they were temporary dwellings until they saved enough money to build a more permanent home from brick or stone. Next up, we have the Pennsylvania Log Farmhouse. Now, I know you're not supposed to have favourites, but I really did love this house. It just seemed familiar somehow, despite its wooden construction, which we rarely see here in the UK. This is a replica of the house that Thomas Mellon and his family built 4 years after they arrived in Pennsylvania in 1816. To find out more about Thomas Mellon and his bank, check out the first video in this series. The original farmhouse still stands in the town of Export, Pennsylvania. Thomas Mellon described his family's early years in America as years of all work and no play. But within 4 years, the hard work had paid off and the family had started to prosper. The log cabin, which had given them so much satisfaction and contentment when they first settled in America, had begun to seem small and cramped. So in its place, they built this as a fine 6-room dwelling. The construction is similar to the log cabin. However, to build this farmhouse, the logs are completely squared and are tightly fitted to prevent rain from seeping in. The greater size and more finished appearance of this farmhouse was a sign of increasing prosperity to the Mellons. More and more, better and better household furnishes replaced the crude and largely homemade furniture they had in their cabin. The presence of even a few bought clothes and shoes were a sign of a more comfortable lifestyle. Daily life still entailed hard work. The tasks of ploughing, tending crops, looking after livestock, repairing fences and land clearance were time-consuming and strenuous. The women in this house will have noticed little change in their routine from when they were in Ireland. The routine of baking, cooking, cleaning, sewing, spinning and weaving continued as it always had. The downstairs of the farmhouse hosts a dining room, a separate area for preparing food and a room for gathering. Each room has a fireplace, and upstairs there are 3 bedrooms, 2 of which have their own fireplace too. Next up is another house that I really loved, and this is the Western Pennsylvania log house. This house originally stood in Clarksville, Greene County, Pennsylvania, and was home to Uriah and Marinda Hupp and their 12 children. We do not know if Uriah built this house or if it was already here, but the Hupps were emigrants from Germany in the 1760s, and I could see mid-European influence in this home. It felt light and fresh, and I enjoyed the layout. The steep stairs also reminded me very much of home and some of the houses like the back-to-back houses I've explored here in the United Kingdom. This house seems roomy on first sight, but with 12 children, it must have been quite the squeeze. This is the first house we see with a porch, not something you would ever see on European homes of this period. Porches are a feature of American log houses from the 1800s and differentiate them from other log structures around the world from this time period. A fact I love is that the German and the Irish emigrants influenced one another. Ulster emigrants who settled in Pennsylvania copied the German style of log house building and vice versa. And people from different backgrounds met and they married, creating new communities. She thought she'd had a rest. Oh gosh, well, unfortunately, yeah, they're very steep. No, I do not. The shop closed when I was born. Last but absolutely not least is the West Virginia Mallister House. The West Virginia Mallister House was built in 1827 by Richard and Sarah Mallister near Tyler Creek, West Virginia. It showcases the adaptation of Irish emigrants to Appalachian life. The house is constructed from local pine and sandstone, and the house also reflects the use of available materials in frontier regions. Richard Mallister, a descendant of Ulster migrants, was a farmer who cultivated corn and flax and raised livestock. The 1860 census indicates that he was literate, highlighting that he valued education. And he also had personal belongings to the value of $1,200. And that would be about $36,000 of purchasing power today. So he did quite well for himself. Their first child who survived into adulthood was Isaac Preston Mallister, and he was born in 1816. By 1830, this house had been doubled in size to accommodate 8 children, 3 under 5 and 2 aged between 5 and 10. Another 3 between 10 and 15. They had a lot going on. In 1853, Cabell County authorities purchased this house to use as Cabell County Poor Farm. According to family stories, Richard and several of his grown-up children and their families moved to Arkansas. Richard returned to Tyler Creek later in his life and died in June 1867, aged 75. He's buried in Enon Cemetery, just a quarter of a mile from the house he built in 1827. The Poor Farmhouse was extended into the early 1900s. One section of Richard's house was removed, The other section has now been rebuilt here at the Ulster American Folk Park. Cabell County Poor Farm remained open at Tyler Creek until 1929. And there we have it, folks. We've come to the end of our visit to the New World. There is another house here, but I've been reflecting on whether to feature it or not. It tells a difficult tale of success from the enslavement of humans. And although it's the grandest home in the museum, I need to do some empathetic research, speak to some people to bring that one to you. And of course, watch this space. If you enjoyed my videos, subscribing to the channel helps so much, alongside your wonderful comments and shares, and it really helps our community of social history lovers to grow. Thank you for your support with this, it's greatly appreciated. Reflecting on my visit to the Ulster American Folk Park, it is a world-class museum, and a place that tells a story unlike anywhere else I've been. In next week's video, I'm going to be showing you another living museum in Northern Ireland. And the slum-dwelling lovers amongst you rejoice, because I know you love a good working-class home. We're going back to the city and the grime with another array of breathtaking homes of real people. So until then, have a great week, and I'll see you on the next one. Goodbye.